Hello, it is now 2 p.m. Eastern Time. You have joined the orientation webinar for the fiscal year 2023 Improving Adult and Juvenile Crisis Stabilization and Community Reentry Program Grantees Orientation webinar. To allow for additional sign-ins past the hour, we will start the webinar in a few minutes. Good afternoon. Thank you for joining today's orientation webinar for the fiscal year 2023 Second Chance Act Improving Adult and Juvenile Crisis Stabilization and Community Reentry Program Grantees. My name is Alexis Lacey. I am a Deputy Program Director at the Council of State Governments Justice Center, and I will be moderating today's webinar. Today, I am joined by Meg Chapman, who has spent the past 25 years working in a variety of social science research, policy development, and analysis and program evaluation roles. In 2021, she joined the Department of Justice Office of Justice Programs, Bureau of Justice Assistance as a policy advisor supporting the Corrections, Reentry, and Justice Reform Policy Office. Her portfolio of work is focused at the intersection of behavioral health and corrections. And I'm also joined by Jennifer Lewis, State Policy Advisor for the Second Chance Act Innovative Reentry Initiatives, Bureau of Justice Assistance, Office of Justice Programs at the U.S. Department of Justice. Jennifer has been with the Office of Justice Programs, U.S. Department of Justice since 2006. She currently serves as a grants management specialist for the Bureau of Justice Assistance Programs Office. In this role, she manages and provides guidance in the administration of Second Chance Act grant funding. Also, Eva Juarez is a contractor that serves as a research associate with the Planning, Performance, and Impact team at BJA. She has been on the contract for just over a year and a half and works primarily with programs in the corrections and reentry portfolios, which includes Second Chance Act programs. And finally, Sarah Wordsworth, Deputy Division Director in the Behavioral Health Division here at the CSG Justice Center. To give you an overview of today's webinar, we will do introductions to the Bureau of Justice Assistance and the Justice Center. Then we will provide more information on the Improving Adult and Juvenile Crisis Stabilization and Community Reentry Grant Program. And then we will talk about the planning and technical assistance process. During the section where we talk about the planning and technical assistance process, we will ask that one representative from each grant team introduce themselves and the grant program to all of us during the webinar. Please use the raise hand function to be unmuted for that introduction. After that, we will discuss the post-award grant management, followed by information about the performance review reporting. And at the end, we'll have time for question and answers. At any time during this webinar, you can use the chat function at the lower right-hand corner of your screen. And we'll keep a running list of questions. And at the end, we'll do our best to get through as many questions as we can. And we can follow up by email for questions that were not addressed during the webinar. I also just want to make a note about the questions. And I'll repeat this again, but if you have questions that are specific to your grant program that relate to like your budget or things like that, please reserve those for Jennifer Lewis and just reach out to her via email. If you do put them in the chat here, it's fine. We'll just forward those over to Jennifer and she'll get in touch with you individually about those questions. And now I'm going to turn things over to Meg Chapman, who will talk more about the Bureau of Justice Assistance.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us. Great to meet you virtually. So as Alexis mentioned, and thank you, Alexis, I am going to start with just a little bit about BJA and kind of where we're situated. So the Bureau of Justice Assistance is located within the Office of Justice Programs, or OJP. And OJP provides a wide range of services to the criminal justice community in the form of grants, training, technical assistance, and research. So BJA is located within the Office of Justice Programs, and there are also other agencies that sit within the Office of Justice Programs that all sort of share the same mission of supporting the community in its efforts to address public safety. And so while our focus today is on your BJA award, just sharing that there are other agencies that you may be aware of and have grants and engagement with that all fall within the Office of Justice Programs or outside of the OJP. Next slide. So BJA's mission is to provide leadership and services in grant administration and criminal justice policy development to support state, local, and tribal justice strategies to achieve safer communities. So to do that, we work with communities, governments, and nonprofit organizations to reduce crime, recidivism, and unnecessary confinement, and promote a safe and fair criminal justice system. Next slide. And BJA does this through funding, as you all know, education, provision of equipment, and supporting partnerships and collaboration. Next slide, please. So next, I'm just going to provide a little bit of background on BJA's reentry efforts, which are supported by the Second Chance Act and its suite of competitive grant programs. The Second Chance Act was signed in 2008 and reauthorized in 2018. Through both the initial and reauthorized act, BJA has awarded over $600 million in grants to state, local, tribal governments, nonprofit organizations to develop, implement, and test strategies through our competitive grant programs. And so before we go further, so next slide, please. We just wanted to pause for a minute to get your engagement or start some engagement by having this poll to get a sense of your experience with federal grant programs and BJA specifically. So if you could respond whether your organization has experienced or received Second Chance Act grant in the past, whether you have experienced or received a BJA grant in the past, but not an SCA grant, Second Chance Act grant that is, have experience with federal grants, but this is your first BJA grant, or you don't have any experience with federal grants and this is your first federal grant. So congratulations in that case. So if you could just take a minute to respond to the poll, that will give us a sense of who we have, or basically sort of where you're coming from with respect to this grant program. Or grant award, I should say. So we'll have our, okay. All right, so it looks like about half of you all have had a Second Chance Act grant before. So some of this will be familiar information. A quarter of you, wow, this is such a nice even split. A quarter of you have had a BJA grant, but this is your first Second Chance Act grant. So much, probably 75% of what you'll hear will be very familiar with you or to you. And then another quarter of you have no experience with federal grants. And so this is your first federal grant. And so for all of you, I'm hoping that this, joining this webinar and then your subsequent work with us will help ease any anxiety you may or may not have with respect to administering and implementing this grant. And as I said, for those of you with some experience, some of this information will be familiar. And for those of you who are newer to this, hopefully this information will be helpful. Next slide, please. And so for those of you who have had BJA grants before, this will be familiar to you in the sense of the Second Chance Act program is structured very similar to our other competitive grant programs, where the goal is to provide localities, in this case, localities and nonprofits, with funding to support implementation, piloting, and/or expansion or enhancement, and with Second Chance Act funds in this case, of reentry programs through these competitive grant programs. And then we complement awards with training and technical assistance that is available through a provider who, in this case, has experience in both crisis stabilization and community entry, and with support in your administration of your federal grant. So this is similar to how we structure all of our competitive grant programs, where you have access to support in the form of a training and technical assistance provider. Next slide. And in the case of the Second Chance Act grant program, we also have sort of an umbrella unit, which is the National Reentry Resource Center, who serves as the national convener and coordinator of all our Second Chance Act grantees. It also serves as the clearinghouse for all reentry related resources and training, as well as funding opportunities. So if you haven't visited the National Reentry Resource Center already, I would definitely encourage you to visit it and just learn more about the current resources on there, and to join the mailing list so you can be apprised of new information that gets posted onto that site. Next slide. And so this slide summarizes the key partners that you'll be working with to implement your grant. First, there's you and your peers, whom you will have both the opportunity to formally and informally engage with throughout the life of the grant. So we have found and heard from our grantees that opportunities to engage with each other is really a valuable experience. And so we certainly provide that to you as part of supporting you in your implementation of your grant. Then you have BJA as the funding organization, and you're hearing from me. I sit within our policy office and I provide guidance. I work closely with the training and technical assistance provider, and I provide guidance to you and directly to you and through them on the goals and objectives of your award. And then within BJA is the programs office, who you'll hear from in a little bit. That's Jennifer, on the administration of your grant. Third, you have a training and technical assistance provider. In this case, that is the Council of State Governments Justice Center, who Alexis is with, as well as Sarah. And they are your training and technical assistance provider. So they provide a coach to work with you throughout the life of your grant, starting with completing your action plan and then continuing throughout the life of your grant to sort of just monitor your progress so that they can report back to us on your progress, but also just to often troubleshoot, problem solve, maybe some issues or challenges that you hit along the way, as well as to elevate some of your successes to BJA so that we can celebrate them with you. Fourth is the National Reentry Resource Center, which I mentioned earlier. And as I said, I would encourage you to join their mailing list so you can be notified on all reentry related resources like new webinars and training opportunities, as well as funding opportunities. So the other point about this slide is that the Council of State Governments Justice Center is both your training and technical assistance provider and also administers the NRRC. So you will see their name a lot. And I'm going to, speaking of him, I am going to turn over the mic to Sarah to just tell you a little bit more about the Council of State Governments.
Thanks so much, Meg. So the Council of State Governments Justice Center, we're a national, nonprofit, nonpartisan organization that combines the power of a membership association serving state officials in all three branches of government with policy and research expertise to develop strategies that increase public safety and strengthen communities. We work in all 50 states to uphold justice, offer second chances, and ensure safe and healthy communities. And we are lucky enough to support the Second Chance Act as the health and housing training and technical assistance provider. So that includes all of your grants focused on crisis stabilization and community reentry for adults and youth. We also support other grantees focused on addressing substance use disorder, addressing housing needs, and other reentry strategies as well. And we work to deliver training and technical assistance for you, which is really to support you throughout the life of the grant and answering questions, providing resources, and having continued engagement to make sure you're able to have the information needed to plan and implement your programs. So I'll talk a little bit more in the next slide about some of these other pieces. So as our model for training and technical assistance is we have the TTA provider who will be your main point of contact for the grant. We have peer learning options. So today we're going to have you introduce yourselves, tell each other a little bit about your program, but then throughout the grant, you'll have lots of opportunities to connect. There's monthly cohort drop-in calls where you can connect with other sites in addition to the TA providers as well. So that will be a great opportunity for you to stay connected to other folks doing this great work. There will be other virtual and in-person events where you can meet fellow Second Chance Act grantees. We also have access to experts both internally at our organization, but also sub-awardees who have specific expertise that can be helpful in areas such as crisis, implementation of medication-assisted treatment, other reentry best practice issues. We also develop resources and tools. So this is webinars, things along those lines, but also written products and tools that you can use that will support. So we love spending time with you as grantees because we find out some of the challenges going on in the field. And then we're able to develop resources to support that. So another site around the country who might not have received the grant but is having the same issue can have access to a resource that was helpful to you all. Next slide. So your TA coach is the air traffic controller. They're the one-stop shop. They'll be able to answer all of your questions. You'll have monthly calls with them. They will work with you on an action plan, which is a series of questions that help better understand your program and provide you a foundation for being able to collect data to answer some of the performance measures pieces as well. We provide implementation support and resources. So if you have questions on a topic such as trauma-informed care, what are some resources out there for criminal justice or nonprofit stakeholder? That's the type of thing we can help answer and share information on. The peer learning we talked a little bit about. We'll also have learning communities, which is going to be opportunities for you to connect with experts and talk about specific issues. Last year, the learning community was really focused on thinking about when people reenter the community, how to really connect them with crisis services and what that looks like. We also do site visits for all grantees in this grant track. So at some point during the life of your grant, we'll be able to come and visit you and do some in-person meeting facilitation, training, or really whatever meets the specific needs you might have. Next slide, please. And so part of our work together is we want to develop goals with you. So we will work with you on a TA plan after the action plan is complete to think about what are the things that we can work on together to support you with. It could be implementing a specific screening tool. It could be related to data collection. It could be related to finding additional funds in the long term to sustain this program once the grant ends. So the goals will really work with you to identify, and then they'll be updated because we'll meet some goals and then we'll be able to move to the next set of goals as well. So we'll work with you to identify it based upon going through that action plan that I mentioned, but also just based upon your needs that come up as your program develops and as you move from planning to implementation. Our goal is really to help you meet the grant milestones so that way you can develop the best program that meets the needs of your communities. So we're going to talk a little bit more about a program overview. So this is the grant track name, which is Improving Adult and Juvenile Crisis Stabilization and Community Reentry. Go to the next slide, please. So you're the second cohort for this grant program, which is a pretty unique position. So you join 21 total sites, which are states, local, and tribal entities who've received this award. And it's been for over $15 million at this point. And this is super exciting because this is really a new approach to reentry. It's thinking about the risk factors when people reenter the community that they might have for overdose, suicidality, and other barriers such as housing that they have in the reentry process, and how to support them as they reenter to avoid those crisis situations. Next slide. Okay, we've come to the best part of this, which is we're going to give an opportunity for you all to introduce yourselves. Some of you may not be able to get off mute, but we'll do the best we can. So I'm just going to go through the list. If you have one person that's able to say hello and just talk for a short amount of time, like a minute and a half about your grant program, that would be fantastic. We'd love to hear from you. We're going to just go in alphabetical order. So we'll start with Allegheny County, Pennsylvania. Okay, we have a hand raise from Grantee.
Hi. Oh, you can hear me?
We can hear you.
Okay,
Hi,
perfect. Hi, my name is Brandy Harrison. I'm a project manager on the Justice Collaborations team at the Allegheny County Department of Human Services, and we are super excited to meet everybody in this grant cohort. Very excited to hear about the work that others are going to be doing as well. We wrote our proposal to develop and implement a pre-arraignment diversion program at the Allegheny County Jail. We are an urban county compared to other counties around us. We're the county that Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania is in. And we only have one facility, one correctional facility for our county. So everybody comes there. It's also a booking facility. So our plan is to put diversion coordinators in jail intake because folks come to jail intake to be fingerprinted and ID'd before their arraignment. And so we have access to many data systems, and we want to try to pull together like what supports and services they have and kind of pull together more information and hopefully a diversion plan that can be presented to the arraignment judge at that time in hopes that we can prevent individuals from being fully booked into our jail and requiring a jail stay, and they can be released at that time. We know that about 50% of our population in our jail that's booked into our jail leaves within 14 days. So we think that we have an opportunity to really move that bar forward and by getting more information to our MDJs, our magisterial district judges. We have some excitement from some of our magistrates. And so we're really excited about this project as a mechanism for one of our overarching goals to reduce the jail population and also to improve access to services.
Thank you so much. Super exciting to hear more about your program, and we look forward to working with you. Next up, we have Blackfeet Tribe of the Blackfeet Indian Reservation in Montana. And I know at least one person joined us because they were in the chat.
Hello, everybody. I'm really glad to be here. My name is Chenille Grant. I am actually the coordinator of our Blackfeet Healing to Wellness courts here for the Blackfeet Tribe. And we've actually wrote this grant to actually kind of bolster our services here on the reservation. So this grant is really about hiring staff to help us meet the gaps of substance use disorder treatment and co-occurring disorder treatment, reducing barriers to especially outlying communities on our reservation. we have a lot of barriers with transportation, and just those outlying communities do not have any services in them. So this grant is really going to help us provide in-person services to those communities and support services. Also helping us develop more comprehensive plans with each client, and then connecting them to culturally relevant treatment services as well. So we're really excited. This is our first grant with this, under this program. We do have other BJA grants, but this is our first reentry grant. But yeah, we're really excited. This grant will help us support staff to help that with that gap of the substance use disorder treatment. So we're really looking forward to working with you all and meeting all of the other grantees.
Thank you. We're looking forward to working with you, and welcome to the world of second chance acts too. Excited to have you all participate in this.
Yep,
so
glad.
we will go next to the city of Huntington, West Virginia. So if one of you is on the line, if you can just post in the chat, or you can raise your hand, that would be great. If we don't see anyone, we can always come back to you. Okay, so we'll go to Clark County Department of Juvenile Services in Nevada. Do we have anyone from Clark County who wants to share a little bit about your program? I see a hand raised there. Hi.
Hey, good afternoon. It's Danilo Chavarria with the Clark County Department of Juvenile Justice Services. We're excited for this opportunity. Our proposal is for Spring Mountain Youth Camp. It's a facility. It's Spring Mountain Youth Camp is about 35 minutes from Las Vegas. There's about 80 kids there, 80 boys there at the moment. So our proposal is to. Okay, so the kids are 12 to 18 years old, and they're adjudicated delinquent. They're put in Spring Mountain Youth Camp by the 8th Judicial Court. We plan to provide reintegration services through Justice Works, they use evidence-based aggression replacement training. So the Clark County, the reintegration program will begin when youth are in the Spring Mountain Youth Camp, about 3 months before the kid is released, and is going to continue on through after release for about 3-4 months as well. So they're going to focus on making sure that the kids' mental health is followed through, and that they go, to their appointments, and that that we're looking at some of the recidivism rates afterwards as well. So we're excited for this opportunity, and look forward to learning from all of you. Thank you.
Thanks so much. We're excited to have you. Let's go next to Fulton County, Georgia. Okay, seeing Amy raising their hand.
Okay. I think, can you hear me now?
We can. Hi.
Hi, I'm Amy Maxwell. I know it says Fulton County, but the project is actually with the Fulton County District Attorney's Office. I run their conviction integrity unit, and part of what we do, in addition to actual innocence, is we look at unjust sentencing. And we, to date, have adjusted the sentences in 46 cases, ranging from drug cases to murder cases. My boss, Fonnie T. Willis, is very adamant about keeping the community safe while trying to help others. And so we have an incredibly successful in-house pretrial diversion, but it is for fairly low-level entry, if you will, into the criminal justice system kind of cases. Our project will be very different because it will be post post-conviction, post-incarceration. And as I said before, some of the cases are going to be very, very serious. We have partnered with the Morehouse School of Medicine. They, and in particular, the Department of Psychology, and they will be providing the counseling, the direct counseling, both individual and group counseling for anyone we help get out of prison. In addition, we will in-house have a social worker and a peer mentor that will work with the folks trying to get them reintegrated. We are hoping that this will be so obviously successful that we'll be building it into sentences in the future.
Fantastic. Thanks so much. And I'm loving just hearing the different types of projects, just the diversity of things happening in this grantee cohort. We're next going to go to Healthcare Access of Maryland. If you can just put it in the chat or raise your hand if you're from Healthcare Access, and we'll get you chatting.
Good afternoon. Can you hear me?
We can. Hi.
Good afternoon. My name is Tamika Duffins. I am the Director of Complex Care and Social Needs at Healthcare Access Maryland. We are a nonprofit located in Maryland. And we have several different initiatives, but we will be working to actually extend some of our current programming, which we call Returning Citizens Community Connections. So we're currently working with individuals who are both pre-sentenced and sentenced throughout Baltimore City, Baltimore County, Anne Arundel County, and some other jurisdictions in the state of Maryland. We have a team of community health workers who actually work with those individuals as they're released from incarceration to make sure they have access to health care, access to primary care physicians to help minimize ER visits. We're also working in order to support individuals with connection to behavioral health. And we are supporting some other existing programs where we're working with individuals who have a diagnosed substance use disorder to also ensure that there is a collaborative approach of providing care and support, as those individuals may need varying resources as they return to the community, in addition to addressing those different areas. We also screen and support individuals around social determinants of health in order to address any health disparities that may be impacting their access to health care.
Thank you so much. We look forward to working with you.
Thank you.
So next we'll go to I.M. Scholzbacher, Center for Homelessness, Inc. in Florida. Hopefully I pronounced that relatively right. You can just share in the chat or raise your hand if you're representing the Center for Homeless. Okay, so not seeing anyone from there, but please feel free to chat in if we may have missed you. Next, we have Louisiana Parole Project. You can raise your hand or note in the chat if you're from Louisiana Parole Project. Okay, Second Chance Center, Inc. in Colorado. Do we have a representative from Second Chance Center, Inc. in Colorado? Hi.
Good afternoon. My name is Candace, and I'm the Deputy Executive Director with Second Chance Center. We are a reentry organization committed to assisting men and women transition to lives of success and fulfillment. This Department of Justice support will allow us to connect earlier and more often with individuals while they are still incarcerated to develop a plan around continuum of care for behavioral health services. and ensure that upon release, individuals are connected into our community care collaborative of providers.
Thanks so much. Excited to learn more and for our team to connect with you all soon. And last but not least on this list in alphabetical order is St. Louis County Administration Building in Minnesota. So a different St. Louis than what some people are familiar with. Do we have anyone from St. Louis, Minnesota here? Okay, so we will follow up with those who were unable to join. We also are recording this, so this will be available to those teams as well as your team members who weren't able to join, so they can learn more about the other grantees. And I am going to turn it back over to my colleague Meg to talk a little bit more about the program.
Thank you, Sarah. Hi again. So, exciting to hear about just collectively everyone's projects. I've been looking at them individually, but just hearing your voices and what you're planning to do, it's really exciting. So yay. At any rate, so I'm going to go through this is a little bit of a refresher because you all responded to the solicitation for this project and were awarded grants. And we like to kind of go through just a refresher on what this program is about, what are sort of allowable uses of funds and what are allowable costs. Because you wrote this a while ago, and sometimes it helps to just kind of refresh on the big picture. And it also might inform some conversations you might have on like, okay, this is what I wrote once, something might have shifted or changed, and you know, I need to adjust a little, but it always is important to kind of go back to the core goals and objectives of the grant so that you can kind of make sure those conversations are informed by that. So having said all that, just a refresher on this, the Crisis Stabilization Community Reentry Program goal is, you know, as you all are aware, people reentering the community from correctional facilities face higher rates of death, overdose, suicidality, mental illness, substance use disorders, physical health conditions, homelessness, more so than the general public. And so this program acknowledges that people reentering the community are in crisis or experience crisis shortly after reentering the community, often leading to further crisis and or justice system involvement. And crisis can include mental illness, substance use disorders, homelessness, and other challenges, whether those be economic or family issues. So the goal of this program is to ensure that crisis stabilization is available to people reentering the community. And I certainly heard that sentiment from many of you. And that the crisis and reentry systems are coordinating to better service this population. So CSCR is an opportunity for you to try new and innovative approaches and support that cross-system collaboration to support both adults and juveniles. That's different from some of our other Second Chance Act grant programs where this is serving both the adult and juvenile populations reentering communities after a period of incarceration. So that's the program goals. I'm going to go to the next slide and just do a quick review of the program objectives. Excuse me. So as mentioned, this program really supports and is designed to enable collaboration and meaningful stakeholder engagement to further support the success of people reentering the community from prison or jail or juvenile detention facilities. And reentry services must focus on that care and coordination and collaboration, particularly between those reentry and crisis response stakeholders and systems. And that can look different in different communities, as is evidenced by you all and sharing what you know is working or you'd like to try in your communities. Next slide. Another objective of this program is to ensure that individuals with serious mental illnesses have timely access to appropriate recovery supports, including, and that may include peer support services, medication management, case management, and psychosocial therapies. So you all have been awarded grants that are responsive to these objectives. And as I mentioned, as you work with your local teams and coaches from Council of State Governments Justice Centers on implementation, please continue to revisit these objectives and the specifics of your application to ensure that you continue to be aligned with and responsive to the goals of the program. Next slide. Some of you may have requested priority consideration under one or more of these three areas. If you did, we expect you to be responsive as you implement this grant, whether it be targeted efforts to address barriers to access and opportunities among historically marginalized populations in your community, and/or you may have proposed to allocate 40% of your award to a culturally specific organization to provide targeted programming, and/or you may have proposed to ensure program participants receive care continuously and without breaks in service through a community care provider program, which is community mental health center or a certified community behavioral health clinic. So as you implement your grants, please reference back to your application so that your coach can work with you on implementing the programs consistent with any priorities that you included in your application. Next slide. And this is a reminder that there are 3 items you just need to pay attention to. One is, and Sarah referenced this, the action plan to be developed with input from, and as she mentioned, your coach will support you in completing your action plan, and then it comes to BJA for review and approval. And we expect to see that within 6 months of receiving final budget approval. There'll also be a request for a final report at the end of your grant project period. And then also, and we're going to get into this later, is regular reporting on performance measures that show the progress of your grant. Next slide. As I said, you all have received your award, are in the process, or have your budgets approved. So these next 2 slides are, again, reminder slides, a reminder of allowable uses of funding, and then we'll get into allowable costs. And we, as I said, we find this to be a good reminder, even while you're still early in your grant, particularly if you're, contemplating any changes that may be necessary. So allowable uses of funding, that may be including screening and assessment and identification of individuals for program participation, and the development of case plans that support clinical needs. Maybe that's during pretrial detention or as early as possible upon incarceration and prior to release. We talked a little bit, or some folks talked a little bit about supporting a continuum of treatment, recovery, and transitional services that may start pre-release and continue post-release into the community, and the importance of that being based on risks and needs to ensure that individuals are set up for success. Also may include benefit and care coordination among government stakeholders or community-based organizations, behavioral health providers, to sort of support that continuity of care upon release, as well as recovery support services to ensure there's access to clinically indicated medication, access to treatment programs, access to, other components that would support success, whether that be housing or transportation. And I think that covers everything on this slide. And also efforts to provide suicide, relapse, or homelessness prevention programming. And lastly, peer support services, which we have, heard from and seen across the community as being really supportive element to ensuring success post-release. Next slide. And then this is just, again, just kind of refreshing on allowable costs, which might include hiring a reentry coordinator or peer support specialist, or subaward to a culturally specific organization for services or programming, to a community-based treatment provider, or reentry service provider in the community, or even a local evaluator. Other examples might include the costs associated with implementing a new curricula or screening and assessment tools, the costs associated with some of those recovery support services like transportation or housing, and supplies and equipment, as well as travel to attend a relevant conference or the symposium that we host as part of the grant program. So the important thing is that any of the current or any new funding requests must have a clear nexus to the program. Supporting you in getting started in the administration of your grant and any necessary changes to your grant is the role of our programs office. So that's who you're going to hear from next. I'm going to pass it over to Jennifer.
Thanks, Meg. I hope everybody can hear me okay. Next slide. Oh, I'm not sure. This is not my portion.
We're going to do getting started. Next slide, please.
Not sure this is.
Okay. So for the planning process, Meg mentioned it's a 6 months planning process. And that will really focus on the action plan. There's a picture of the action plan on the right. You'll work with the TA coach, who, as we mentioned, is your air traffic controller on that to complete the action plan. It will ask you some questions that will help you think about data collection, but also some basics about just planning your program as well. And it'll be submitted to BJA approval, hopefully within the first 6 months of the grant program after you get approval. So for the action plan components, there's the general award administration, grant activity and program description. There's information about the participants you plan to serve. So thinking through really who you're gonna be able to serve with the resource available. Screening and assessment tools. So how will you screen for mental health, substance use, other issues that may be key, such as housing and homelessness. Treatment and other services, trainings and accomplishment barriers, and any support needed. So then we really, after the action plan is when we get into the TA plan we discussed earlier, but just really, as we go through this process, thinking of where you need additional support, where you have questions, where you want additional things. Next slide, please.
And I can just jump back in here that it is really important for BJA to encourage you to think about sustaining your program beyond the life of the federal grant. And so we offer a number of resources to support sustainability, from thinking about how to create a story about your program, how to share program results with potential funding sources, and if you have a local evaluator, how to sort of apply those research findings into promoting the sustainability of your program. And so this is just one example of the toolkit. Going back to the National Reentry Resource Center, we have numerous materials on that resource center to support you in your efforts to sustain the program. I know it may feel a little early to talk about sustainability when you're just getting your grant started, but sometimes it is kind of helpful to, and we often encourage you to kind of think about those, what you hope to achieve at the end of the grant program early on so that you can plan accordingly. So your TA coaches will continue to share resources like this toolkit with you as you move forward in implementing your grant. Now I will pass it off to Jennifer.
Thanks, Meg. All right. Hi, I'm Jennifer Lewis. I'm the BJA Program's State Policy Advisor or Grant Manager. I am your direct contact for everything grant management or admin related. And today I'll be covering post-award management and federal compliance. I have a lot to go over today, so I'm going to try to get out all the information as quickly as I can. So we're going to start off with an attendee poll. If you can let me know what your role is in Just Grants, if you're a grant award administrator, an alternate grant administrator, financial manager, an authorized rep, an entity administrator, or not any one of these or others. All right, I don't know if we can go ahead and see the results. All right, it looks like most of you guys are the grant award administrator. Helpful to know. Thanks for participating in the poll. We'll move on to the next slide. Okay, so what's the role of the BJA Programs Office team? Our team is pretty much responsible for the timely and accurate grants administrative information across the board, and we offer a lot of responsibilities to assist with accepting the award, accessing funds, compliance with award conditions, reviewing and approving performance reports, grant award modifications, or what we call GAMs, training technical assistance, and grant closeout procedures. And my information is also included in the Just Grants on the main screen. Next slide, please. So I know some of you may have heard me say our financial office, which is the chief financial officer, and they're pretty much who will be providing financial policy and guidance regarding your accounting, your budget, and financial and grants management of the award. They're the ones that clear and approve the budget, review budget modifications or extension requests. They also provide financial customer service assistance. They can also do financial monitoring and perform site visits and compliance review. And they also can provide assistance with financial grants management training and assistance and grants financial closeout. We provided their contact information there. Next slide. So there are 4 important post-user roles. The first is the entity administrator, and that's the one that can manage the users and change the user information. So make sure that the entity administrator is current and up to date. Then you have your grant award administrator, and whoever is assigned grant award administrator is responsible for programmatic reports, submission of GAMs, and the submission of the closeout. Then you have your authorized representative, which can accept or decline the awards on behalf of the entity. And then you have your financial manager, and they're responsible for submitting financial reports and drawing down funds. So those are the 4 important users for access in Just Grants. Next slide. So this is just a slide for how the award cycle is. First, you have your award acceptance, then you have to access your funds. You want to look at your award conditions and your budget and financial information. You want to pay attention to the administrative requirements and reporting that's required. And then if you have any changes to the awards, you have your grant award modifications. Our office does conduct monitoring for these awards. And then finally, your closeout. Next slide. So how to access your documents in Just Grants or accessing the Just Grant system itself. So you want to pay attention to these 2 buttons. There's the begin button, and this will allow you to perform any functions in Just Grants. So make sure that the grant award administrator or the financial manager clicks that begin button to perform any function. We also have the action button, which is on the top right corner, And if you click the caret down, it gives you access to refresh the screen, print your award package, and then close out the award screen after performing a function. Next slide. So how to access your award package, you want to click on the awards package tab, and that gives you access to the award letter, award information, project information, financial information, and a list of the detailed award conditions. Next slide. So to also access your award conditions and to see the status of your award conditions, you would click the award conditions tab on the far right, and you may have to scroll over a little bit. It'll tell you if your special condition has been met or is in compliance. It will say yes or no. So you need to pay attention to this tab. It'll also list out any amount of withholding if there's a withholding associated with your award special condition. Next slide. So to access funds, you must complete the following. It must be accepted in Just Grants. You must have your ASAP registered in the system, and you have to address any holds if you have any withholding award conditions if applicable, and also address any suspension of ASAP accounts. So if you have an expired SAM registration, we have delinquent reports, you need to make sure to address that before you can access funds. Next slide. So this is just information. Most of you are set up with ASAP already, but this is just in case you have not accessed your ASAP or registered for ASAP. So this is just a resource tool. Next slide. So with any of our grants, you are responsible for adhering to the award conditions. So there are the first 1 through 30 award conditions are standard special conditions that apply to your award at the time of application. Anything like all other special conditions 31 and up are specific to your award. So please make sure you pay attention to these because these could be a withholding. Next slide. So speaking of withholding, withholdings are placed on the award in the event there's a required action that needs to be taken. It could be that the budget wasn't clear or wasn't approved, or if there might be missing documentations at the time of application and a withholding was placed on the award, or any additional approvals that might be needed, a withholding might be placed on your award. And you can always contact me if you have any questions regarding withholding conditions. Next slide. So as Meg stated earlier, there is a required action plan for this award. And you have 180 days after you receive the budget approval from our financial office. And if this has not been met, it may result in the freezing of funds. And I believe for CSCR, you have a limitation of 100,000 of planning funds. So any planning fund activities, you can use the funds for up to 100,000. And then you must complete the action plan. And then once the action plan has been reviewed and approved by the TTA provider, it will be sent to BJA for us to review. Then once we review and approve the action plan, then we will release the implementation funds. Again, if you have any questions regarding the process and approval process, feel free to contact me directly. Next slide. So this is just in reference to the process of the budget clearance. Most of you already have your budget cleared. So this is just a simple process. To save time, I'm just gonna go ahead and pass this. The next slide. So just to let you all know, all costs must be allowable, reasonable, allocable, and necessary to the project. There are a few unallowable costs associated with this program. Those are costs that not support the approved project, any costs incurred outside the project period, any costs incurred prior to the clearance of withholding conditions, any sole source contracts that require prior approval, lobby and fundraising, food and beverages, gift cards, prizes, rewards, trinkets, or any other type of monetary incentives. And our new one is prohibited and controlled equipment per the EO. Next slide. All right, so with, along with your special conditions, award conditions, you are required to participate or complete the grant's financial management training. And this must be completed within 120 days of the grant acceptance. And this applies to the grant award administrator and the financial manager assigned in Just Grants. And typically, if this condition has not been met, funds may be withheld until this training has been completed. And this must be completed every 3 years. So if your certificate is 3 years or 4 years old, that you need to take the training again, it's available online and you can do it at your own pace. And what we do is we ask that you email a copy of this completion certificate to me or your BJA grant manager. Next slide. Okay, so along with your approved budget, you may have subawards and procurement contracts listed in the budget. If so, there are different requirements, and just to save time, these are just different requirements that is required for the subaward and for the procurement contract. To save time, I'm gonna go ahead and move forward with this. This is just resource information, and if you have any additional questions, feel free to reach out to me directly. Next slide. And again, this is for subawards. If you have any changes to your subawards, please note that you will need to submit a grant award modification to add that subaward or change the subaward in Just Grants. Next slide. All right, if you do have a subaward in your approved as part of your budget, you are required to report if the subaward is over $30,000 in the FAFATA system, which is the Federal Funding Accountability and Transparency Act. And we've provided the website and additional resources here. If you have any questions, feel free to contact me directly. Next slide. All right, and then again, with procurement contracts, if you have a sole source and it's over $2,500,000, it does require prior approval. So these are the requirements. You'll need to submit a grant award modification. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me directly and we can go over on how to submit the GAM. Next slide. All right, and this is just reporting requirements. There's 2 reporting requirements. There's a federal financial report, and this is submitted in Just Grants quarterly by the financial manager. And then you have the semi-annual performance report, again, submitted in Just Grants, and this is to be completed by the grant award administrator. And these are question sets embedded in Just Grants. And for the final financial report and the performance reports, they're due 120 days from the project end date. Next slide. All right, just some important reporting tips for the financial reports. You want to report funds that are obligated and or expended, not the drawdown amounts. You want to ensure funds that have been obligated and aligned with your approved budget. You want to report for every quarter, regardless if there's no expenses incurred. So that includes, since you are new grantees, the award date starts back in October 1st. So you'll be reporting from the start of the program. And if there's no activities, you would report as zeros. You want to report cumulative amounts for each quarter. For performance reports, you want to answer the performance measurements questions directly in Just Grants and attach any additional supporting documents. and Ava will go in detail with the reporting requirements. And then you want to provide me with an accurate summary of the progress to date at the end of the report. And the report must be submitted even if no activities occurred in the reporting period. So again, you would submit it as no activities. And then you have a 14 grace period after the due date for regular reports before your funds is suspended. So make sure you get those reports in on time. If not, then you'll have an automatic withholding on the award until those reports have been submitted. Next slide. All right, and so if you need to make any changes on the awards, we have what we call a grant awards modification. This is assigned to the grant award administrator, who will have access to submit GAMs and just grants. And there are two types of GAMs. There's the programmatic and the financial. For the programmatic, you have programmatic costs, that requires prior approval. Any scope changed GAMs. So if you want to alter programmatic activities, change your subawards, you would submit a scope change GAM. And then you have your financial, which is the budget clearance GAM, and then a budget modification GAM. And so if you want to make any changes to your budget, that's over 10%, or if you're adding a new category that wasn't previously approved, you want to submit a budget modification. And also the sole source GAM. So that was discussed earlier. If you have any sole source over 250,000, you're required to submit a GAM for prior approval. Again, if you have any questions, you're not sure if you need to submit a GAM, feel free to reach out to me and I will guide you in the right direction. Next slide. All right, we also have project period extensions. This must be submitted in Just Grants at least 30 days prior to the current end date, but I usually tell my grantees to submit it earlier in the event there's any change requests or back and forth between us and the grantee for additional information. So you can always submit earlier. You must include narrative justification and revised timelines. You can't just submit a project period extension just because you want to use all your funds. You have to have a justification. And generally no more than one extension, not to exceed 12 months is approved, but we'll review if for some reason you need an additional extension, we'll review it on a case-by-case basis. Next slide. So OJP does conduct in-depth monitoring for 10% of all of our active grants each year. So you might be selected for in-depth monitoring. If that's the case, I'll either conduct it remotely or on site, and all recipients are required to participate. And we'll do a full review of your grant award documents, including the administrative, the financial, and programmatic aspect of the award. At the end, there will be an official letter with the results of the monitoring, and include any issues for resolution and technical assistance to address those issues for resolution. Next slide. And finally, closeouts. All obligations must be incurred on or before the last day of the performance period. Again, the liquidation period is up to 120 days after to make any remaining payments. Then once the grant award administrator submits the final performance report and submits the final FFR and the last drawdown in ASAP, you would go ahead and submit that closeout. And so just to let you guys know, ASAP will be suspended once you submit the closeout or 120 days after the project period. And I believe that's the end of my presentation, so I'll go ahead and pass it over to Evangelica. Thanks, everyone.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Jennifer. As Alexis mentioned earlier, my name is Eva Juarez. I am the research associate with the Performance Planning and Impact team. So this grantee orientation presentation will cover several topics related to performance management at BJA. I will discuss requirements for data reporting, including what you need to report, where reporting happens, when reporting is due throughout the year, and how to report the data. I will also share some data reporting and goal setting best practices to set you up for success. Next slide, please. So what is performance management? Performance management is a process by which grantees regularly collect data on their grant activity to determine whether they are implementing activities as intended and achieving their desired goals and objectives. Using performance measures that capture inputs, outputs, and outcomes over time enables pre and post comparisons that can be used to assess change. BJA has established performance measures, i.e. questionnaires, for each grant program. These measures are included in the original solicitation that you responded to. I will also review the specifics of your program's unique questionnaire during this orientation. You can find additional information and several resources on the Office of Justice Programs, Grant Performance Management and Progress Reporting Information Portal at BJA's performance website listed here. Next slide. Why does BJA use performance measures? Performance measures have many purposes and benefits to your program and for BJA. They allow BJA to look at your program holistically as well as at the local level to identify areas of success as well as potential opportunities for improvement. This also allows BJA to target training and technical assistance resources to subjects or localities that need them most. Furthermore, BJA routinely receives data calls and requests, sometimes from Congress or the White House, and relies primarily on the data provided by grantees during reporting periods to respond to these inquiries. BJA and OJP regularly track progress toward goals and reports annual key performance indicators to leadership during budget formulation as well as ongoing yearly monitoring. Lastly, DOJ is required to comply with the reporting requirements of federal laws, including the Government Performance and Results Modernization Act of 2010, the Digital Accountability and Transparency Act of 2014, and the Grant Reporting Efficiency and Agreements Transparency Act of 2019. Not only does BJA benefit from performance measurement, but there are many benefits to grantees and your program. You should be systematically monitoring performance measures to include some of the data BJA collects, as well as your own programmatic data to help identify success, as well as areas for continuous improvement. Monitoring performance measures can help you proactively address challenges and generate evidence that you are meeting your goals. This can lead to sustainability and continued resource advocacy for your program. The data you collect has the potential to show your impacts, not only for your program, but for your organization as a whole. Next slide, please. What data will I need to report? There are 3 required sources of data that you will use to report: performance measures, narrative questions, and closeout questions. The performance measure questions for your program are a series of questions that measure outcomes of grant activities and demonstrate the accomplishment of goals and objectives of BJA programs. Grantees report on performance measures during each semi-annual reporting period. A series of narrative questions related to your grants, to the grantee's specific goals, objectives, barriers, and successes are also provided to grantees to be used for data reporting and are reported only in January and July. This technically applies to you as grantees, would be every reporting period, which is in January and July. And finally, closeout questions that are a series of questions grantees will need to report. So only when activities have been completed and the grant is ending. Next, please. Where do I report? You will be reporting in Just Grants, which is an online system required for grantee performance measurement, reporting, and grant management. You can access that website at the first link on the slide. And for any Just Grants related questions, you can contact the Just Grants supports team, which is, you can see the email there and their phone number is listed as well. Next week. When do I report? So CSCR grantees report performance measures semi-annually in Just Grants. If your program reports in Just Grants, you are no longer reporting requirements in the PMT. That's the previous tool that was used Just Grants is actually taking over on that for that. And this table also outlines the type of data that you'll report during each reporting period and when your reports are due in the system, which I believe Jennifer went over earlier. Next slide. So see here is the overview of the CSCR questionnaire. A direct link to the PDF version of the performance measure questionnaires can be found on the slide. And note that the version differs based on whether you received an enhancement grant or an implementation grant. We like to know each program's goals and objectives as a reminder of why we are asking you to fill out the questionnaire each quarter. And these measures are ultimately there to assess your progress toward the program's goals, which we will discuss in further detail in a little bit. Next, please. So now we'll take a look at the questionnaire structure. So there are questions focused on services provided, the number and type of participants receiving services, and program completion. As one of the first sections is general award information. This is where you'll indicate whether there was grant activity during the reporting period and select the types of activities that your program funds. There's also grant activity, which is identifying which phase of the grant you're in. There's also a program description and a program participant served section. This collects data about the participants receiving services and the types of services that are provided. Next. There are also sections on screening and assessment tools, drug and alcohol testing services provided, training, and semi-annual narrative questions. The last narrative questions allow space for you to add any additional information or details you feel may be relevant to any of the questions in the sections for the grant overall. Next, please. Now, defining goals and objectives. When responding to the narrative questions in the grants, you will need to define goals that you have for your program. Keep in mind that goals should be specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and timely. It is good practice to review your goals on a regular basis and reassess how you are doing. Make sure to use data to describe how you are doing, as well as anecdotes to describe some of the good work you are doing. We want to set you up for success and offer some tips and lessons learned. We therefore want to review common challenges with defining goals and objectives. It is important to write well-defined goals and objectives to clarify your priorities and highlight criteria for success from the very beginning. This smart mnemonic walks users through important dimensions of good goal and objectives. They should be specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time-based. We recommend that you reevaluate your goals twice a year to determine whether they should be updated, and be sure to use your data to drive this process. Next. And here are a few examples of well-defined SMART goals that will set your program up for success. While the goals on the left are great goals, they are difficult to measure and not specific enough to measure success. Finally, I would like to share some tips to improve data quality that your program can do from the very beginning. It is recommended that a designated staff person coordinates all performance measure data collection and entry to ensure consistency. If this is the first time you will report data, make sure you are familiar with the data you will need to collect and report. Do this by reviewing the PDF version of the questionnaire. Ensure a backup person or persons are aware of the data collection and reporting process so that they can fill in the designated person is unavailable or leaves the role entirely. Consider available data collection methods, including case management systems or other databases, spreadsheets, tracking intake forms, and other methods. If partner organizations are included in your program design, be sure to engage with them from the very beginning of the planning process. Determine if formalized agreements are needed to ensure the data is collected and the program meets its goals and objectives. And lastly, be sure that all subrecipient data ensure all subrecipient data or data you receive from contracted service providers is reviewed and validated before completing data entry. And that is all for me. I will now be turning it over to
me. Hello again. So, thank you, Eva. That probably feels like a lot, especially for those of you who are 25% who are new to federal grants. And not that we wanted it to feel like a lot, but there's a lot of pieces to administering and implementing and sort of being compliant with all the reporting requirements and such. And so these next few slides are going to give you just quick on some of the guidance materials or sites that are available to you to support you. We mentioned Just Grants a number of times with respect to GAMS, with grant adjustment notifications, with respect to performance reporting. So this first slide is just to a site and the URLs at the bottom to learn how to navigate Just Grants, and has a number of tutorials as well as FAQs, as well as user support when you have challenges with the Just Grant system, if you have challenges with the Just Grant systems. So this is your site for especially those of you who are less familiar with Just Grants. Next slide. And this is just the types of the various trainings that are offered through Just Grants. And if you note, a lot of this is touching upon the different elements that Jennifer went over and sort of hone in on different touch points within your grant, whether it's accepting the award, managing the award, making modifications to the award, financial reporting, and then what Ava was covering in terms of performance reporting. So these all are guidance training, and there's also tools to help guide you in the process. Next slide. And then lastly, this is a slide that gives you the link to the Department of Justice grants financial guide, and that can help you with some of those questions with respect to how you can use your funds to support your grant program. So these are websites and these are resources and tools, but I hope that through this training, and you will get copies of the slides which also have help desk numbers and the all the important information and summary information that was shared by all of us. But I also hope your takeaway is that you have not only online support and email support, but you will see our contact information. You have personal support. You have coaches from the Council of State Governments Justice Center. You have staff from BJA, Jennifer and I, to really help you on this journey. It's an exciting journey. You all sounded really excited when you're sharing your projects. It got us excited. And so this is all a great thing, and you have support to help you manage it and implement and be successful. Next slide. And this is just, as you move forward, please do connect with us. There's multiple ways. Again, you're going to get these slides. You'll see these newsletters, funding newsletters, different opportunities to stay connected with both Office of Justice programs. And then on the next slide is the Bureau of Justice Assistance. So our various social media sites, as well as just getting on BJA's site and getting on our mailing list, which I assume you all are on. So that was, as I said, a lot, but really an overview and really an opportunity, hopefully, to just like put some words in your sort of bank in your brain, and some processes that will kind of become familiar to you as you implement your grant. And I know we covered a lot in this hour and a half when we're closing out, but we do really want to open it up to questions. And as Alexis mentioned in the beginning, please do put your questions in, I believe the chat was the instruction. But if we don't get to them, we will get back to you. And as Alexis also mentioned, any sort of feel free to reach out to Jennifer or myself, but also Jennifer on all the sort of administrative stuff that she mentioned as being available to you to support along the way. Next slide. So I'm going to pass it to Alexis, who's going to moderate Q&A, and I haven't looked to see if there are any questions, but she will let us know.
At this time, thanks so much, Meg. We don't see any questions in the chat. Are there any questions? Or see Jennifer, I see you're unmuted. Did you have something you wanted to share?
Oh, no, I was just unmuting myself in case I need to answer any questions.
Okay, yeah, definitely. So right now, I do not see any questions in the chat. Oh, here's one from Brandy Harrison. Are there any action steps we need to take at this time regarding budget review, or do we wait for word from the Office of Financial Management?
So when the Office of Chief Financial Officer reviews your budget, you should receive a grant, a GAM, a budget clearance GAM and just grants. There should be a notification sent out to you. If not, double check with me. I can go ahead and check your grant directly.
And also, it's important to pay attention, Jennifer, you may want to add to this, but is to which individuals are listed in Just Grants, because those are the folks that will receive the notification. And if you're not one of those people, then you may need to reach out to one of your colleagues to see if they received a notification, as well as just checking, getting access to Just Grants and checking yourself. Jennifer, did I say that all correctly?
Yeah, most of the budgets for CSCR have been cleared. If you're unsure, please contact me directly. Most of the time, it could be already cleared, but there was no notification because of, the contact list is in Just Grants. But again, just feel free to reach out to me.
And I think what you all just mentioned answers Chanel Grant's question around how will they know if they have budget clearance. It'll be sent out, notification will be sent out to the fiscal point of contact. So if you don't know about who that is, or if you have any further questions, please reach out directly to Jennifer Lewis about that.
I did want to mention that under award information and Just Grants, if you have to scroll down, but under that award information tab, it should say if you have a budget clearance or not. Again, if you're unfamiliar, just don't hesitate to contact me.
Any further questions? Amy Maxwell just was saying that it's really helpful, and it was really helpful to meet you all. Yes, thank you. It's really helpful to meet you too. And we will be in touch further. I know that people probably have questions around the technical assistance process in terms of like, when will you hear from your TA coach? When will you have your first TA call? All of that. So directly following this webinar, so sometime in the next week, you will be someone will reach out to you from our team to schedule the first TA call. So we'll work with you on scheduling that, and then that will be the first time that you meet with your actual TA coach. If you do not hear from anyone before the holiday, feel free to reach out directly to myself or Sarah, and we'll make sure that someone reaches out to you about TA assistance, and we'll work together further. Any other questions? Okay, so moving forward, the points of contact are all listed here. That includes myself, Sarah, we're the TA team, and then all of your BJA individuals as well are listed there. These are some additional resources for reference here. And we just want to thank you. My contact information, as I shared, is here on this slide, as well as a link to our website here at the CSG Justice Center. Please sign up for our newsletter. We have some really helpful events and other trainings and things like that on our website. We thank you for joining us today. We look forward to working with you further. If you need anything, feel free to reach out. Otherwise, thank you so much and have a good rest of your day.
Thank you, everyone, and happy holidays.